This is Pod Populi.
Podcast for the people.
The Great Love Debate. It's the Great Love Debate.
The Great Love Debate. It's the Great Love Debate.
Hi again, everyone. It's Brian Howie. Welcome to the Great Love Debate, the world's #1 dating and relationship podcast. Since 2015, I am back here in the very fine studios of Pod Populi, podcast for the people. I am at the one in Boca Raton, Florida. It is on the brink of being boiling hot in Boca Raton, Florida. So if you're going to come quick. I have a very complicated premise to present to you today. And so I had to bring in a professional who could speak passionately and eloquently on some of the things I want to talk about. She has been a branding, marketing, PR guru for a long, long time. That's how I initially met her. She knows all the personalities and stars in coast to coast. She loves dogs. She loves guns. We may or may not get into both of those things right now. The lovely Kelly Reeves. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
You're in California as we speak this?
I am in California, in beautiful wine country.
There we go. All right. So we're doing coast to coast, modern technology here.
Yeah.
Here's the concept I want to be. I'm speaking to the side of the audience who probably understands this a little bit better than me. There's the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit making up God, Jesus. Is that something like that? You're a little more Christian than me. Yeah? Is that basically what it is? I believe there's a concept when it comes to love, dating, and relationships that is 3 parts of the same thing. It is 1 part self-preservation, it is 1 part self-sabotage, and it is 1 part self-defense. And we are going to break into all 3 of these things. I want to start with something that I know me and you briefly touched on the other day, the concept of self-sabotage. And we run into this a lot, that people either do not trust the good feelings or want to parachute out before the bad feelings. And we all do this. And the more we get experienced in our relationships, the more we're sort of looking for the red flags and the warning lights and whatever. And a lot of the times that the relationship goes bad has nothing to do with the relationship and has nothing to do with the other person. It has to go with this sort of inner angst that takes over everything. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And it's a lot of times it's based on past relationships and even past experience. Like for me, my self-sabotaging behavior stemmed from my dad leaving when I was very young, my parents divorcing. So I had abandonment issues. And thankfully, I've been through a lot of therapy and spiritual work and personal growth work to kind of be more self-aware of that type of behavior, where I would just the first sign, I would just bail. And that was the self-sabotaging behavior that I used to practice. Now I'm kind of like, okay, does this make sense? Do you want to give it a little more time? Maybe you're reading into it too much. Maybe you're letting old fears get in the way and you're projecting it into this new situation. It doesn't even need to be there. So,
what helped you recognize that, though? So that had to be a shift at some point. Was that just wisdom and experience, or did that something that come to therapy where you began to recognize the patterns before you did too much damage?
Oh, it was kind of a combination of each. I mean, definitely therapy helped, and kind of working through all of the old, quote unquote, daddy issues or whatever. Mm-hmm. But, it was also, like I said, I did a lot of spiritual work. It took a lot of learning, self-awareness. I think that's a big thing. Also forgiveness. I mean, forgiving past negative experiences and forgiving the people involved in those, forgiving yourself. Self-forgiveness is a very difficult thing for people to practice. So I think and just kind of getting to a point in life where I'm like, okay, I don't have to, like you said, parachute out at the first sign of something not being perfect, and just saying, give it the opportunity to grow and see, because if you don't, and you're just going to repeat that pattern over and over, and it's never going to get you anywhere. So you have to find a way to stop it. And it takes courage, because we don't want to get hurt. But at the end of the day, I have to always say, if this doesn't work out, I'm still safe. I'm still fine. I still have, all my friends, my family, my job, my home, my dogs, like everything else. It's not going to be the end of me if this relationship doesn't work out, especially if I give it a shot.
And you're right about that. Usually, I don't know, first 90 days, first 6 months, you're in this relationship, you're starting to have feelings, and we tend to self-sabotage before it goes bad, and we tend to self-sabotage before it gets too good. And that's hard on both sides. And, a lot of men are, recognize the patterns, and a lot of women recognize the patterns, and a lot of time you might say to your partner, like, oh, no, I know you have a tendency to self-sabotage. And they're like, no, I just don't like you. So you can't always just assume like this is the reason. It's like, no, that's not what this is. Oh, you're self-sabotaging again. No, you're just terrible and all that. But being able to recognize, am I feeling this way because of legit reasons, stimuli, or does it go back to my patterns that I'm so afraid of being hurt, or I'm so afraid of being rejected that I'm going to find a side door and get out of this before I even have to deal with what this is? And we do that a lot. A lot of relationships fail because we don't give them the chance to succeed.
Yeah, 100%. And that's kind of, we have, and I talk about this in my self-defense classes, that the amygdala in our brain, that's our fight, flight, or freeze response, our survival mechanism that's natural. So it kind of kicks in. Like, this is my survival mechanism to protect myself from heartbreak or embarrassment or, whatever. So that kind of instinctively kicks in, and we just want to either, fight it, or flight, bail. So and that's where self-awareness comes in, and really being able to be kind of self-analytical. And I'm a big proponent of journaling. Like, if I start to feel myself going down that road, I'll start just to journal and write everything out. Like, what am I feeling? Why am I feeling this? Does this make sense? Is this rational? And a lot of times it's like, okay, no, you're kind of defaulting back to old patterns, and kind of doing the what if scenarios. Like, what if I stuck to it? What if it ended up working out if I stuck to it? And what if it didn't work out if I stuck to it? And again, like, am I going to die? Am I going to, suffer some tragic, horrific accident because this, guy didn't like me, or if I, whatever. So, we want it to work, but at the end of the day, we end up self-sabotaging because we're either afraid of it to work or afraid of it to fail.
Right. And, sometimes we want to look at one, again, a moment can be terrible, but it can be a moment, a bad day from your partner, a bad feeling, this dinner didn't go well, this event, it was weird, we didn't really get along, and then you start to pull back, and you start to do that. You brought up the journaling thing. Do you go back and look at your note? Is it just the exercise of journaling, or do you kind of be like, let me see what my first early, sort of reflections were on the situation? What do you do with that?
Yeah, and it's good to do that because then you can see growth. Like, I can see when I first started kind of the spiritual journey and therapy, my journal entries then are vastly different from my journal entries now. And before, they were a lot kind of angrier because I was frustrated. I was trying to figure it out. I'm, stuck in a paradigm of my thinking and habits and behavior, and wanting to get out of it, really wanting to change and create different habits and behaviors and thought patterns. And then, it took a lot of work and practice, and, like I said, journaling, meditation, all that stuff. And so, yeah, I look at my journal entries now, and they're completely different. So
was it
much more calm.
Was it helpful or frustrating for you having your own PR and communications company, that your job, and you're being paid to represent the best version of your clients, while sometimes kind of have to deal with that for yourself? Like, was it the same exercises, the same thought process, or you're just like, they are two different worlds and I keep them separate? How do you brand yourself positively in the dating space?
It's separate. I mean, you can look at yourself as your own brand in the dating space, and it's always like bringing out your positives, of course. Like, what do you bring to the table in a partnership, a relationship? And it's like, what do you want? And like, I have my my non-negotiables that I'm like, okay. And, as you get older, and for me now in my 50s, my non-negotiables are much different than when I was in my 30s and even 40s. So, and that evolves and changes over time. But I know that, what I will accept in a relationship and what I won't accept, I know what I bring to the table, and somebody has to be able to match that or exceed that. So, and it takes, a lot of confidence to be able to do that, because a lot of times we naturally as humans don't want to see ourselves as worthy and valuable, and that you are a great catch, even though all your friends know it and everybody else knows it, but we have that part of us that still somewhere doesn't believe it. So you've got to really convince yourself.
Yeah, and sometimes because of the self-sabotaging, as partners, we are trying to convince them that they're a great catch. And I do care about you, and I do believe in you, and I do that's, it's a valuable exercise, but it's also a lot of work sometimes building up the confidence of the person that you are choosing to be with. Mm-hmm. Are any of your
confidence? I mean, you have to have the confidence to be in a relationship. You have to have the confidence to be yourself, to set boundaries, to be able to speak, your voice and your truth. But you also have to have the confidence to allow your partner to do the same, and not step on them just because you may not agree, or it might be a different perspective. So it does take a certain level of, again, confidence, self-awareness to be able to kind of meet each other in the middle and know what you both bring to the table and value each other.
Right. You have to be confident that you are worthy of this good situation and confident that you can survive leaving this bad situation. And sometimes those are different things.
Yeah. I think the confidence in leaving is much more difficult because, I mean, and I'm sure you've heard it a million times, like they're in, toxic relationship and they're not being treated well, but they stick to it for whatever, either fear of being alone, or if it's something like a long-term marriage and there's going to be a bunch of financial ramifications. So it does take that big leap of faith and confidence to say, this is not healthy and I got to get the hell out of here.
Yeah. People ask me all the time, what's the best way to get into a good relationship? And I always say, get out of a bad one. Because that is the barrier. You brought up your non-negotiables. Were any of your non-negotiables in your 30s suddenly became negotiable later on, and you realize, like, actually that's not as important to me?
Yeah, there's some. I mean, when I was in my 30s and I was, traveling all over the world, and I had my career, my PR agency, and I played golf all the time. Like, I wanted a guy that was exactly like me. Like, you have to be traveling and you have to play golf and you have to this. And now I'm like, no, it's nice to have different hobbies and different interests. And, of course you want a lot of things in common, but you don't have to be exactly like I am, which is what I was looking like, a mirror of myself, which doesn't exist. So, so now
we hear from people that are like, I won't date somebody unless they're obsessed with The Office. And I'm like, why? Really? Who cares? Like, things that are important to people, because then they're able to be like, if I don't find this exact thing that's exactly, then it's not that it's not me, it's that I haven't found that person. And that is part of the self-sabotaging too, is it's not just self-sabotaging the relationship, it's self-sabotaging the opportunities that might be presented to you, because you come up with possibly this arbitrary list of things like, I need to golf with you. Well, maybe I could just caddy for you and we can spend the time together and it's fine. A lot of people are like, I need somebody who likes to travel. Well, maybe you like to travel because you don't have a reason to stay home with somebody. Sometimes we look back on our negotiables like, yeah, that I guess I do need a meat eater. I don't know. All right, I want to get into the most important thing of why I brought you in here tonight. We kind of checked off a lot of the self-awareness, which comes into get yourself in therapy, ask the questions or whatever, and the self-sabotage. I want to get into the self-defense, and it's very rare that I find somebody who can speak about this. I got to take a quick break. We are here with Kelly Reeves, and we will be back right after this. All right. Self-defense. That can be emotional, which is a little bit of the self-preservation, the self-awareness, or it can be physical. And I never want to paint the picture of dating is dangerous. It is. Life is dangerous. But, I don't want anybody to date out of fear, and I don't want to be going. That being said, you have to be prepared. What are people sort of, especially women, sort of underestimating or not looking for when they are either early in a relationship or out there looking for one?
When it comes to self-defense?
Yeah.
I think, like the biggest, concern is online dating, and, people just like don't take certain proactive precautions. I mean, I'm big when I teach my self-defense classes. One of the biggest thing I teach is situational awareness and avoidance. And on online dating, how can you practice that? So it's things like you always meet in public, try to meet in the daylight, and let somebody know where you're going. Like let a friend know, like, hey, I'm going out with this guy, maybe even send them the picture of the guy or gal. Let them know where you're planning on being, maybe text and check in just to make sure, because I have heard a lot of dating horror stories, and not just like, oh, it was just a terrible date, but, stories of, assault and physical attacks that are, because they met somebody online. And and a lot of times all they do is just chat and text back and forth, and then they meet the person without having a phone call. And there's actually this one, gosh, I forget the name of it, a dating site that I did PR for, and one of the requirements was you had to do a 30-second on video meetup kind of thing. So that was part of, so you can see that the person looks like they say they look like, so
Right.
you're not getting catfished, and and you kind of get to see who the person is before you even meet them in person. So that's I thought that was a really good service.
You're right about that. So I'm not going to counter that. I'm just going to put that over here for the side. We used to go on dates with people we met slightly shit-faced at 2:00 in the morning, and here's my number, and you call me up, and you pick me up, and we go out, and we did that. And I'm not sure we knew any more about that person from the bar, the club. They could have been married. They could have had an alternative, and the thing was, those people, the true, I think, psycho, might not reveal themselves till 3 weeks into dating, or even 3 months into dating. So I don't know how we sort of how we do the due diligence on that when somebody who's, the assault tendencies or the physical violence, it might not come up on date 1. And then you're like, well, we went out, we had a really nice dinner, and then date 3, they're like, oh, I've never figured out a way to get around that. I know you obviously, study this stuff a lot more than I do. Are there behavioral things once you are out with the person that you can look for? Do they drink too much too early? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are signs that you can look for, because, in any, and these are with my students that are former assault victims and victims of domestic violence, where they're, mostly female, and their former partner or whatever, typically, and men too. I mean, I have some guys that have been through horrific relationships with very abusive women, and they start out all nice and charming, and you think it's great, and that's how they hook you in, and then you start seeing little tiny signs, but then you start to think, oh no, this is just a one-off thing, or maybe he's just having a bad day, and you kind of forgive it and let it go, and then it happens again. But usually it's a drawn out thing where they've kind of got you hooked in before they start showing their true colors. And then you get to the point where, then you feel kind of trapped or afraid to leave or don't know what to do or where to go. So I just say, always trust your gut. And if you see a sign early on, that's probably going to be a red flag into the future.
The best, I think, red flag, or the most obvious one that I have heard, are the ones who speak with a degree of resentment and or anger towards either an ex or a woman in general. When they sometimes speak in a way like, "Ooh, wow, he really has some anger issues towards that woman," that to me is a blinking red light. Like, if you're expressing that to your new partner and you're bringing that piece of baggage for you, I would worry about that.
Yeah, and it kind of depends. Yeah, because I mean, we all have our bad dating and relationship experiences that we kind of all bring into the new one. We talk about it, and that's the way of are venting to each other. And it can, in a way, be an odd form of connection. Like, I went through this bad experience, and oh my gosh, I went through a similar experience. So you can kind of trade war stories. So I think it really depends upon what is said and how it's said. But yeah, you do have to be cautious about how much you talk about an ex. And I mean, because I can fall into that trap too, of like dating this horrible guy and go, oh my God, he did this and blah, blah, blah. And
Right.
it's like, oh, wait a minute, I've got to be mindful of what I say to the new persons.
Yeah, you do. It is a balance, because you want to be honest, and you want to be authentic, and you want to know where your worries are. I mean, I don't know what the statistic on how many women and men are the survivors of some sort of physical or emotional abuse. It's got to be in the 90th percentile. It's really, really high. So you don't want to be flippant about it, like, oh, it happens to everybody. But how do you balance that as somebody who's gone through that while trying to be positive and hopeful in a dating environment? You that's hard to feel flirty when you feel terrified.
Yeah. Well, I think it just boils down to honest communication. Like, if the person you're dating is expressing frustration or angst or whatever about a past relationship, just find a way to delicately steer the relationship in a different direction, or just say something like, hey, I want to be compassionate to what you went through, but can we not talk about this, whatever, and try to, because you want to, I mean, if the relationship's going to go somewhere and has a future, then communication is key. And you're going to have empathy and sympathy to somebody's past, because that's part of who they are today. So, but I think it's important to just make your own feelings clear of how you feel about the conversations and what you talk about.
Where along the line did you become not just an advocate for self-defense, but literally somebody who's in the business and instructing it? Was it, I need to learn, I didn't know how to protect myself and I learned this and then I had to pass this along? Or was it sort of gradually over time that you thought it was an unfulfilled niche?
Well, it's kind of both. So when I had the animal rescue, we would have to go into pretty bad areas in, dog fighting and gang territory, and there's drugs. So there was always the need to feel, be able to defend myself at a certain level, just because you never know what you're going into. And so there's that. I grew up with parents in law enforcement, so there's always been some sort of self-defense kind of mindset in the family. When 2020 hit and all the craziness was going on, it kind of heightened my desire to get more educated and trained. And that's when I started working with firearms instructors. And then I saw that there is a niche. I saw that there is a need, especially for women. And I started hearing more and more women saying, gosh, I just want to feel free to walk to my car late at night, or I want to feel, safe walking my dog late at night or whatever. And I noticed that and I took a self-defense class previously, and I noticed that most self-defense teachers or instructors, they teach reactive self-defense, like, oh, if you're attacked, this is what you do. I like to come at it from a proactive standpoint, like this is how you avoid it altogether if you can. And but some attacks aren't going to be avoidable, but if you have certain things that you do just as a habit, like situation awareness and avoidance and stuff like that, then you can probably avoid being attacked in the first place.
Two things women love, and you are one of those women that when I travel around the country, it's a very, very high approval rating. The women love dogs, and the women love guns. You want to go on a good date? The women want to go shoot guns. Was that something you always felt, or later in life, or whatever? I know you said you grew up around like law enforcement stuff. When were you just like, I just love this Annie Oakley feeling that I have here?
It was probably, it started in like maybe, I don't know, 2018, 2019. And
so
then,
fairly recently.
It got, like I said, with all the stuff that was going on in 2020, it just kind of got me into instruction. And then the more I got into it and the more I talked about it, the more I wanted to actually start instructing people. So then that's when I got my NRA certification, and then I got my USCCA home defense and concealed carry instructor certification, and then I got my DOJ firearms certification. So it just kind of snowballed from there, getting all these different certifications in instruction.
And California's a little tougher, I think. You can't just walk around with a gun, right?
Well, you can. I mean, you have to have a concealed carry permit, but it's not like Florida, which is,
or Texas. We do the Great Love Debate in Texas, and all the girls have like cute guns in their car, like they all do, and they're like, and they have like, oh, look what my boyfriend gave me, and it's like a cute little gun with their monogram on it. It's a cultural thing, but it's also an awareness. It's a safety thing. Like you have to protect yourself, your home, your animals, your kids, your family. I get all that, and to be able to go into a dating environment and kind of let them know, either subtly or overtly, I can handle myself and I can handle the situation. I think that is going to scare off a good percentage of the predatory types who are like, I don't want to take this on. Just letting the suitor, the date, the relationship know that you've got a pretty good set of balls on you when it comes to this shit, and you can handle yourself, you can handle a firearm, and you can kick when needed. Is that how do you express that on date one?
It's usually, what do you do? Well, I'm a firearms instructor. Oh, I can't. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next one.
It's kind of. I mean, I agree. I think, I'm not saying you should say that if that's not what you do, but that would send a certain signal that you can't fuck around with me here. Yeah, I don't know. I would be like, okay, she's pretty badass here. I think that is going to, or even if you're like, yeah, I took 6 years of karate, or I know this, or I'm going to my self-defense class, just sending that signal, because a lot of these predatory types prey on what they perceive to be weak. And I'm not saying that their perception is accurate, but if they see a little bit like, she's more likely to, and again, it's nobody's fault when you put up to this, but if they're just like, oh, she'll just deal with whatever I'm doing, that's different,
Yeah. And if she doesn't know how to defend herself, or some people just have naturally, I hate to say weak personalities, but they're just, it's an insecurity thing. And predators like that can just sniff that out a mile away.
Yeah, and we brought up that before, not just the self-sabotage, but the self-awareness and the self-preservation. A lot of times we don't speak up. We're scared to speak up. We're scared to object. We're scared to say something bothers us, whatever. And then you've lost all balance of power and control. And then it can get to a scary place.
Mm-hmm.
You know? So if somebody calls you or contacts you and they're like, you know what, I'm going back out in the dating world. I've been married for 20 years. I watch a lot of Lifetime and a lot of Dateline, and it just seems scary to me. What are the first steps somebody should learn or take? Is it literally like learn how to use a firearm, or is it, basic carrying mace in your pocket? I don't know.
Well, I kind of go back to the proactive stuff of just, like, one, it's common sense is a big deal. Like, okay, you watch the scary stuff on TV, and you're worried about that and know it's out there. So it's like, okay, it's kind of like I say, if you're going out, you're going to be doing a lot of drinking, you go ahead and have an Uber pick you up before you even leave the house and leave your car at home. So you make that choice before you even leave the house. So before you even go on the date, you make a decision on how to safely get yourself back home. And that is, like I said, like meet in a public area that's well lit. Let friends know where you're going to be. So an example, I went on a date, maybe about a year or so ago. And I let my best girlfriend know. I was like, okay, I'm going on a date. We're going here. And it's in downtown Paso, which is, a small town. But I was like, I'm going on a date, and I'm going to be here, and I should be home by 9, and I'll text you when I get home. Well, I didn't text her because we were still out. We were still at the bar, kind of having fun, good conversation. She drives all the way downtown, sees my car, could see me and him, in the bar, and that we were talking. So she left a little note on my car saying, hey, I just wanted to check on you. And that's a really good friend to do that. So I left, and I got her note, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. And she's like, no, I saw you guys were in there talking still. And so, but if I hadn't, something had happened and I didn't let her know, and the next morning they found my car and not me, that could have been a whole different scenario.
And there's ways to, go early, let the bartender know, like, listen, I'm meeting somebody for the first time. I don't know them. If I do this, that means something's going wrong, or I don't feel comfortable. Like, there is ways, and that is self-preservation. But again, it is a balance, because I still am a big fan of, I thought dating went better when we could pick you up. And we can go to your house and pick you up and take you out. And we dated like that for a long, long time. But you're balancing that with, I might be stuck at the mercy of some psycho, and I can't get home, and I can't, or I'm going out, I'm Ubering out. If you Uber out, you might drink more than you would have normally if you had driven, or if he had driven, and then you're getting in that situation too. There's no perfect answer to all of that. I still think that we can't date fear-based, and we can't completely eliminate the chivalry. I would go to your house, I'd pick you up, I hold the door, I might show up with flowers. I thought that was great. We're not allowed to do that anymore, because you think we're all psychopaths. But and they're like, I don't want to
know where I live. And I'm like, great, now I know
as soon as I have your phone number, I know where you live, or I can find it. Like that does, I'll find out where you live. I get. Balancing that with, if you do feel comfortable, you're going to feel a little more confident, and taking those walls of that element of fear down is going to allow the date to flourish too. If you're not so worried about it, you're going to give the thing a better chance. So it is a balance, and there's pros and cons to both. I see that.
Yeah.
Can you be picked up?
As a woman, I would love to say, yeah, come pick me up with flowers and do all that stuff on the first date. But I just unfortunately have a level of caution about me where I would feel more comfortable meeting them out and maybe just, and one of the non-negotiables I used to have that has changed, like I used to never do coffee dates. Like we're like, nope, coffee dates are cheap and they just want to get in and out
Yep.
quickly. And I know you and I talked about that
Yeah,
before.
it's a business transaction.
And now I don't mind it. I'm like, it's in the afternoon, it's safe, it's less likely for something to happen. And and you can end up going on a really enjoyable coffee date
Yeah.
that can turn into something else. So that's, like I said, in my 30s,
listeners know how I
was
feel
like,
about
no,
that.
coffee
I
date.
say, go get ice cream. If you don't like each other, at least you had ice cream. And if you do like each other, you're licking stuff. And that's a good sign, too. It's the same price point in the same amount of time. You want to meet for frozen yogurt? I don't know. I think that's frozen yogurt seems flirtier to me than cappuccino. But maybe, I don't know. I'm not a coffee drinker. But you're right. And a lot of people, sometimes people are like, oh my God, I didn't feel that magic in 15 minutes in the middle of Starbucks. I don't know. But it's not a bad sort of pre-date. I'll give it that.
No, it's not. Like I said before, that was like I would never, ever do it. Now it's like, if I meet a guy and he's like, hey, do you want to meet for coffee? I'm like, yeah, because, then you go into it without any assumption, like it's just coffee. You're just going to have a cup of coffee with somebody new. And if you end up having a 15-minute coffee or it turns into a 2.5 hour coffee, then.
Now, if he says, would you like to meet for coffee? Are you perceiving that as being asked on a date?
Yeah, I would.
Because that gives him some out too. Like, no, it's just coffee. I just want to get to know you. And then the pressures of this is a date kind of fade away.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, coffee is definitely a more casual setting than a drink. So, and I think it kind of, like I said, it kind of lets some of the assumption down but I know guys, they don't typically ask a woman out for coffee just to chit chat.
No.
Unless it's like a business type situation.
Right.
But normally they're putting their pinky toe in the water and testing the waters and saying, hey, let's see if she'll go for coffee.
Yeah, she didn't say no to that.
You could assume it's a date.
The other good thing about coffee or even a daytime date, it used to be that the date was an excuse for her to like get dressed up and put on a dress and look pretty or everything. I think like Lululemon changed that you guys walk around in the middle of the day looking good now. And so I think the women are a lot more, you can check me out like this. I think I look fantastic in my workout gear and let's go meet for coffee, where it's like, I don't want anybody to see me before 8:00 used to be a thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and then that also makes it nicer. So it's like, okay, well, I can throw my hair up, put a little makeup on, and still look cute in my Lululemons.
Give me one non-negotiable now, and I will see if I can talk you out of it. Or maybe I just been like, yeah, that's reasonable.
No little kids.
Define little.
Not self-sufficient on their own as an adult.
I think that's reasonable. You should be the priority. I know you're never gonna. If they have 2 little kids, you're always gonna be third.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I chose not to have kids myself, and so I'm like, I don't want to now be some stepmom to somebody else's kids and picking them up from soccer practice. That's not what I want to do.
I agree. Me and you are members of the no kids club. So
yeah,
mazel tov. All right, I'm going to let you plug everything that you want to plug. I want you to plug the self-defense. I want you to plug the dogs and everything. But this is your first time on this podcast. We play something called Worst Date or First Date, which means you have to either give us the absolute worst date you've ever had or the very best first date you've ever been on. Your choice.
Gosh, worst date or first date? I'll go with worst date.
All right, there we go. Always more entertaining. So give me the worst date you've ever been on.
So it was, and this was, gosh, I want to say maybe 10, 12 years ago. I met him and I should have known Tinder. Or it was either Tinder or, no, maybe it was Match.com. Anyway, it doesn't matter. And he looked, so when I got to the bar, he was sitting down and he just said some of the most creepiest things and I'm sitting there the whole time going, did he just say that? Did he just say that? And he grabbed my hand and licked it. And I was just like, oh my God. So I was like, okay, this is really extra creepy. And he had said in his profile that he was 5'10". Well, when he got down that bar stool, he was like 5'4".
Oh,
And I
wow.
was wearing these high heels and I towered over him. And he's like, "Oh, I'd love to see you again." And I just said, "No, that's not going to happen." So
Did he give any context to the licking? Did he just randomly like, let me see how your hand tastes? What was that about?
no, he just kind of grabbed it and looked at it. I was like, "Oh, what do you?" And I said, "What did you do?" He's like, "Oh, it's just, it's sitting there." And I'm like, "Okay, do you
It was
think that
just sitting there,
works?"
so I licked it. Yeah. God, I'd hate to fall asleep on the couch with him around. Yeah, no, that's not good. And so you muddled through another 20 minutes, or you gave him the full 2 hours?
No, God, no, no. And I had already, thankfully I made other plans and I kind of excused myself and went to the restroom because I wanted to wash my hands.
Uh,
And and I texted my girlfriends. I'm like, "Where are you? I've got to meet you right now." So when I went back to the bar, I said, "Oh, I've got to go meet my girlfriends now. Nice meeting you." And that's when he hopped down from the bar stool, and it turns out he was like five, and I'm towering over him, and because I'm only 5'5", but in my
yeah, I
heels,
was
I'm
like, you're
like
not that tall.
five
Yeah.
seven, 5'8".
Wow.
So
That's
he's like, "Oh, I'd love to see you again," and I was like, "No, I don't think so."
That's another good self-defense, self-preservation thing is and again, don't lead with this excuse and don't be too quick to pull it out of your purse to use it, but go in with a foolproof, oh my God, I got to get out of here or I got somewhere to go thing sort of in your head.
Yeah.
Don't fake
That's
like,
why I
oh
say
my
like
God,
meet
kidney
early. Like
pain.
if you're gonna do a happy hour, like have a plan B. So it's like, okay, I can meet you for a drink, but then even if your plan B is really just going back home and hanging out with the dogs, you don't have to tell them.
I think you should
So
have a plan B if it goes well. Let's go here now, or a plan B if it goes badly. So that's it. Like starter date, starter activity, drink or whatever. And then if it's going well, hey, you want to go get some sushi? Or if it's not, like, hey, I got to get up at 4:00 in the morning for a work meeting, like whatever. Give yourself an out and also give yourself a sort of a runway of hope,
yeah. Yep.
All right. Tell everybody about if I want to adopt a dog or whatever, or if I want to rescue a dog, and then tell us about the self-defense.
So if you want to rescue a dog, there's shelters full of great dogs. We work with Paw Prints in the Sand, My Rescue. We are a foster-based organization. We work with all the high kill shelters in Southern California, which means they have a high euthanasia rate. So we're always like adopt, don't shop, like don't go to breeders, don't go to pet stores. A lot of, good rescues like what we do. We rescue the dogs, we get them healthy, we get them trained, and we get them prepared to be in a home. They're always in foster homes. So it's usually we know what kind of home they can be in. Could they be in a home with other dogs, with kids, with cats? So they end up like we have a very, very low, I would say 2% return rate because we always take all of our animals back. So just because we put a lot of work into making sure that they're the right fit in the right home. So that's so I would say if you want to adopt a dog, go to a foster-based rescue that really does spend the time to get to know the dog and trains them and cares for them and make sure that there's proper placement because not all dogs belong in all homes.
Was people getting COVID dogs? Was that a real thing?
Yeah, that was a big deal. So when, people weren't working, people were like, "Oh, I want to foster, I want to adopt." And suddenly all these people, because before they were like, "Oh, I don't have time for a dog." And now that I'm not working, and my cautionary tale was, well, you're going to eventually go back to work and the kids are eventually going to go back to school. And now you have this dog that you didn't have time for before. And then suddenly next thing you know, they're going back to the shelter or back into the rescues. And then of course that happened. We had about 6 months while everybody wanted to foster and adopt. And then when people started going back to work, they're like, "Oh, well, we can't keep the dog now. We don't have." So it was almost like, oh, we just wanted this temporary thing to tide us over during our lockdown, which was kind of shitty to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, unfortunately that happened.
Is dating a guy with a breeder dog a non-negotiable?
No, and it used to be, but now
I just wanted a Pomeranian.
But
Sorry.
it depends upon the situation. If they like, "Oh, okay, I got a pit bull from a breeder," might be like, but a lot of times it's lack of awareness. I mean, a lot of people don't really know, and I didn't realize how much lack of awareness there was until I started the rescue and I started like promoting it, and so many people that I know are well educated, like, "Oh my God, I had no idea this was going on." So, and a lot of people they do get bred dogs for specific reasons. Like I know up here right now where I live in farmland, they typically want dogs that are trained for specifically for protection and bred for protection. So I've become a little more open-minded about it. I'm still on the adopt, don't shop train, but if a guy has a dog that he got from a breeder, then I'm not going to, kick him out.
Okay, unnegotiable. There you go. All right, and if I'm a man or woman and I'm interested in self-defense education and or instruction, what should I do?
What was that?
If I'm interested in self-defense education or instruction, where should I go? Where do I start?
Well, you can. Well, it depends upon where you are. If you're in California, where I am, then you call me. But I would look into self-defense options, but I would also look into people who teach proactive self-defense, like I do. But you do want some physical tools in your belt, and not everybody's going to be comfortable with a firearm. But even for me, as comfortable and proficient as I am with a firearm, I still need to know some martial arts moves, because if I get grabbed from behind and I can't move my arms to reach my gun, I have to be able to get out of that so I can be able to then grab. I guess so it's like a two-step thing. So I do say have some, like if you're going to do anything, do some martial arts, pepper spray, tasers. Well, tasers aren't typically legal in California, but stun devices, they're good, but you have to be good at using them. You can't just say, oh, I've got pepper spray. And like stun devices, you have to hit them on their skin for it to be effective. So if they're wearing like a thick hooded shirt, then it's not going to matter. If you can end up spraying yourself in the face with pepper spray. So
is
I would
pepper
say,
spray not legal?
Learn physical moves, like physical body moves first.
Is pepper spray legal in all 50 states or no? Can anybody have a pepper spray?
I believe so, but California, like some have limits. Like California has limits on pepper spray because of the pressure and the type of spray that's in it. So I would say if you want pepper spray, look on your probably one of your police website or state website and see, just like Google pepper spray and see what's legal in your state.
All right. And as always, whether it's sex or self-defense, being in some level of physical fitness probably is a good thing. Like, run away has some advantages too. Like keeping yourself sort of physically capable as best as possible probably is a good first step.
Yeah, definitely. And like a lot of my students are older women in their 60s and 70s. And that's one of their concerns is, well, if I'm overtaken by a big guy, I'm not going to be as fast and as strong and whatever. So now what do I do? And so just some physical defense and keeping that up and keeping your strength up. And a lot of times it can just be outmaneuvering, like jujitsu. That's what that's all about, is really outmaneuvering your opponent with some basic moves. It doesn't really take a ton of strength.
3 times in my life, I have been punched by a woman. Once I deserved it. Twice they were crazy. So, hey. Sorry, and the time I deserved it, I wouldn't shut up. So anyway, lesson learned. So that was some degree of self-defense, just to silence me. You were lovely. I'm glad you're doing well. I'm super proud of all you are doing. You are as passionate and curious about all sorts of things as just about anybody I know. The stuff you do with the dogs, you be very fortunate to be a dog in Kelly's life. It is. How many do you have right now?
Well, I'm down to 1. They all died.
What was the peak? How many did you have at the most?
I think I had 12 at one time at the most.
And what is legally considered a farm? Is it 12? Can you have 12 dogs?
I had my 5 dogs, and then I had 7 boxer puppies that I was fostering.
Wow. Well, that's who's got time to date. Anyway, thank you for joining me. Shoot us an email, greatlovedebate@gmail.com, if you got questions, thoughts, self-defense stories, or you want to pass something along to Kelly. Go to greatlovedebate.com. We have live shows. We have a show coming up in New York. I haven't done a show in a while in New York. They call it City Winery. Tickets will be going on sale shortly. Go to greatlovedebate.com or go to citywinery.com/New York, I think. Go to the website. So it's the City Winery in New York. Like, share, follow. Please review this podcast. Your reviews, even after 10 years of doing this, they still mean a lot in the podcasting ecosystem because, as always, at The Great Love Debate, we never stop making love. See you next time.